Welcome to the PleinAir podcast from PleinAir magazine. I'm your host, Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir magazine. This is episode number 4. In the PleinAir podcast, we delve into the world of outdoor painting, often called PleinAir painting. For those of you who don't know, PleinAir is a French term which essentially means outdoors. The French pronounce it PleinAir. Others pronounce it PleinAir, but no matter what you call it, there's a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is all about the movement, the painters, the collectors, the galleries, and of course, the art. This week's podcast is brought to you by the PleinAir Salon Competition with $21,000 in cash prizes, including a $15,000 cash prize. This competition ends March 15th and is the last chance to enter before the award goes to the grand prize giveaway at the PleinAir convention. So go to PleinAirSalon.com. Today, it's kind of a somber day because we will be honoring artist Ken Auster, who recently passed away. I found an interview I did with Ken, which I'm also going to play, but I'm going to share some thoughts that he shared with me just a few weeks before his death, and we'll get to that very soon. It's my personal goal to see more people fall in love with PleinAir painting, and you can help. The way to do that is by sharing this podcast with your friends by social media or email. And of course, I hope that you'll subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. You can get it on iTunes or other places. And if you have feedback for me or interviews you'd like to see us conduct, contact me, Eric, at PleinAirMagazine.com. Imagine for a moment that you wanted to improve as a painter, or maybe you've never done any PleinAir painting at all. Maybe you've been an artist your whole life and you've never gone outside and don't know where to start, don't know how. Or maybe you just want to up your game, or perhaps you've never even painted before. So you decide to attend a workshop, but instead of getting just one instructor, what if you got over 60 of them for about the same amount of money? Well, that's what the PleinAir convention is about. We want to help you get to the top of your game as a painter as fast as possible, so we're providing you with a faculty of over 60 of the world's top artists to give you demonstrations on how to paint, plus tips and techniques and just about everything you can imagine, every possible idea when it comes to painting, oil painting, watercolor painting, pastel, urban sketching, and so much more, even some figurative. So we have painting every single day. After the demonstrations, we go outside, we paint. We have a whole group of faculty that do nothing but work with you, walk through the crowd, and you hold up your little card that says, hey, come over to me. And they sit there and they critique you, they work with you, they give you ideas, and they help you be a better painter. That's what the PleinAir convention is all about. No level is too small. Nothing should intimidate you. Even if you don't know anybody, we have ways that you can get together with other people. We connect you with new friends so that you'll never be alone. This is a wonderful opportunity to up your game as a painter. Socially, it's a blast because you're going to meet a lot of people. This year, it's taking place April 15th through 19th in Tucson. And the day before, we have a pre-convention special Matt Smith workshop, which is optional. Matt Smith is amazing. So we're going to paint the red rocks around Tucson, the glowing light, the cacti, and we're going to be even going to the old Tucson movie studio set to paint the old West. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you'll be there with us. It's really an amazing event. And if you register before Valentine's Day, you can save $200. So don't forget, you can learn more at PleinAirConvention.com. Well, I don't want to bring everybody down today, but on this podcast, we need to honor someone who's been very instrumental in the movement of PleinAir in the world, someone who is a friend of many of us, an incredible painter, and an all-around really great guy. Ken Auster passed away just recently from prostate cancer, which had spread through his whole body. He's been fighting it for many years. His father died of prostate cancer. And so he's been especially tuned in, and yet it still managed to take him. It's such a tragedy. In a minute, I'm going to play an interview with him, which I did when we shot a video a couple of years ago. But before that, I'd like to share some things Ken shared with me when we spoke around the 1st of December. And I only wish I had had a recorder running at the time. I was taking notes as rapidly as I could. The conversation was so enlightening that it was just a very special moment in my life, and I want to share what he shared with me. And I had decided to record a podcast and call him back and try to get some of this on tape. And so we actually had something scheduled for this week. And of course, he passed away a couple of days ago, so it was not possible. So I was a little uncomfortable calling Ken because I knew what they were going through. So I called his wife, Paulette. She put me on the phone with Ken. And I think we talked for probably 2 or 3 hours. We caught up. We had some laughs, believe it or not. And he was very comfortable with the fact that he was dying. And I didn't really want to bring it up, but I knew it was something we had to deal with. But he immediately made me feel comfortable talking about it. He told me that this was one of the most rewarding parts of his entire life, what he's going through right now. And he said, we come into the world with nothing, we leave with nothing other than whatever we've done. Acquiring wealth and stuff, acquiring reputation. He said that's just an individual who has taken advantage of his God-given gift of being creative. He said that when you take inventory and look back, the most incredible part for him is the reward from who has come out of the woodwork and has been able to express their feelings to him and the impact he's had on their lives. He said, I never would have known had I not been able to go through this until the last moments. I would have never been able to appreciate the lives that I changed, hearing things from people which are heartfelt and deep. Never would I have thought that this was the case. He said, I never would have realized it. He said, if I had dropped dead of a heart attack, I never would have known. He said, I had no idea how many lives I touched because of all the people who came out of the woodwork. So he said, I did everything for myself and for Paulette, never realized it was touching other people. He said the passion he had for art totally allowed him to go a step beyond the application of paint. He said, I gave them a career. Yet someone may never get that feedback until they know God. It's about being a good painter. He said, I went beyond doing painting. I wanted to give them something greater. I did not realize that all of these people had been helped. He said their comments have been the most rewarding thing. He realized that he changed their lives, and that's been so rewarding for him. He said, when you scrape away all the stuff on the surface, all you are is just a person and just how much sympathy, compassion, and empathy you have for other people. That's all you are. He gave me a compliment and said, Eric, you've changed lives. You're a person with passion from your heart. He said, I recognize your passion. He said, we're cut from the same cloth. He said, fortunately, I've been able to glean some of the wonderful things people have said where it escalates me spiritually, where it can accept anything I have going forward. He said these people and their comments have filled his heart with love and as a result have helped him to accept what he's facing. He said, I know my time wasn't wasted. He said, now I can put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Nothing happens by accident or coincidence. He said, I'm going through it firsthand. We all go there. He said, I'm just going through it quicker, and I have to save some seats for them, meaning you and I. Such a strong, loving God, he said, puts the whole process in balance. The more you suffer, the closer you get to God. He said, we are all fallible and at the mercy of God, and he sent his son to die for our sins. The ability to recognize it, to communicate it, and understand how deep and how much is a revelation to him. And never have, quote, I expected more compassion, love, and empathy than the last year going through this. We as sinners don't want to go there. It's the unknown. We'll do anything to survive. You get to go to a place where you're comfortable. The layers of ego are paint jobs you put on yourself, your ego to protect you. Your sense and ability to communicate with others is so loving, he said. We love on a deeper level than ever before. Once I could expose myself and my true feelings, he said it was like fields of flowers exploding in front of me. The idea of love became so real and so easy. Makes us wonder why we don't try to discover the love sooner, where we could spend our time communicating our faith in Christ, as though there is no fear of the unknown. If I get there 20 years before Paulette, his wife, we have eternity to look forward to together, to love God and to see what Christ has in store for us. It's better to do for others than for ourselves. He says it's overwhelming. We share a vision and a passion and our spiritual beliefs, and it's wonderful to be able to communicate what I've experienced from my perspective, he said. You're right behind me, just the twinkle of an eye. It's been a crazy journey to experience the good part of it, says Ken. I'm going to make the best of it as I can. The longer this takes place, the more I'm accustomed to the circumstances, the more I get out of it in a positive way. The harder I can think about God and my friends and the deep, heartfelt things they said, I could have never known otherwise, and it's pretty amazing. Everything in my mind comes out in color and brushstrokes. You have God, wife, family, and then put yourself low on the scale of what's important. If you have an argument with your wife, who's the loser? You don't want that. She's above you. The only love that will be there forever is God. Come with nothing, leave with nothing. Where I'm going will be more incredible than what I'm going through right now. I had it all planned out, said Ken. Painting daily till 85, painting every day. And then one day you turn around and bingo, they take the wind out of your sails. Who would have ever thought? When I asked Ken about painting and whether or not he was still painting, he says, I can't have a 2-hour burst of energy to paint, and I don't psychologically have the ability to be concerned about a painting. It crippled my creative process, took away my mindset and my purpose. The suggestion box is closed. Nothing is holding me back from painting. I can only assume I'm not painting because I don't want to. If I do have the desire to push myself in that direction, I'll do it. As of this moment, I have no desire to do it. He said, I had a 20-plus year run of my vision, my teaching, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I've never believed it was by accident, said Ken. I had a reason, a purpose to start, and a finish. I made it very clear to teach in terms of how I believed. Laying here thinking, I thought about spirit, desire, and energy. I took inventory of what I've done. I had a clean world, not polluted with disease, discomfort, dark thoughts, or spoiled by something that didn't become that. I wanted to leave it alone and not have people interpolate some meaning. Every painting was what it was. No social commentary. I always just followed what I was looking at to come out without having to steer in a direction to make a cliche. I had no agenda. I was just looking at something. The only thing I did that was different, I tried to take things that were not pretty and make them pretty. Instead of the quintessential awe-inspiring landscape, I found that heartfelt painting things that are pedestrian, a corner with people walking, was more of an accomplishment. To paint something not beautiful forced you to move things around. There are paintings everywhere. You don't have to find a beautiful place. People will appreciate it. Now you can find subjects that matter and are different and interesting. It wasn't shtick. Driving down the street in San Francisco on California Street, I saw things I didn't understand. I took pictures to figure it out. What talked to me? All by accident. Fortune favors the prepared man. I was open. There was a huge reward. It was like an educational process. People looked at things. They said, I know this place. And they were tickled. It's like seeing an old friend. They weren't expecting it because it was out of context. He said, if you travel around the world and you run into your local pharmacist from your hometown, you end up making a relationship because he was out of context. You have something in common, your hometown. He said, see things they realized out of context. I know that place. I love that idea because people could relate to something they didn't expect because they were out of context. There was so much more to the world and the things we take for granted. Why not explore it closely? Your ability to see has become more refined. The idea, Ken says, is the story of my life. I started from scratch and made something, found something, created something that is greater than me. Not because it's pretty, but because it has potential. You never think about what could make it better. It's more exciting to make things better, scrape the surface and make it better. My age of discovery, finding out who I am and what my deepest beliefs are. Things I believe now. So those are the thoughts Ken Auster shared with me. They're a little choppy because I took a lot of notes trying to capture it all. I'm sure I missed a lot of it. It's the best I could make of them, writing as fast as I could. So now here's an interview I did with Ken Auster. We recorded a few years back when we shot a video together. I hope you enjoy it. So tell me about this whole painter thing. What is it about it that gets you up every day and makes you go paint instead of whatever else you could have chosen?
Well, painting is pretty much my life in terms of what I do. And as an artist, as anybody who's in the arts or anybody who's really concerned or takes inventory of what they do and are proud of it or try to be proud of it and try to get better at it. We all live our lives around it, whether you're an actress or an actor or a musician or an attorney or anybody who really wants to be the best at what they do, not necessarily for the accolades that you get, but because it's a self-fulfillment and you're never satisfied with being where you're at. You always feel that you can do better. So it's something that your life evolves around. It's not 100% of my life. I mean, I try to incorporate a lot of things that I love in life and do them on a daily basis, but it's all centered around painting to some respect. I grew up at the ocean and lived my life practically up to my neck in salt water, and my life evolved around the ocean and ocean sports. But I always was an artist, but almost was a surfer first before I was an artist, because my life evolved around the beach. I couldn't go into the studio and paint unless I had gotten into the water that day, because I always felt anxiety, and that still exists today. Fortunately, I still have the stoke to want to get in the water, but in the art world, I'm able to control it in the sense that I can go into the studio or I can go on location wherever I'm at and fulfill the rest of my day with something that is not just fun, but actually is a profession. Being in the ocean is great, but it's not something that you can survive on and pay the bills. And to be able to fall back on something like painting or art, whether it's painting or anything in the arts, if it's stimulating that nerve and tickles you and makes you happy at the end of the day, like you fulfilled something that made you a better person, or you did something that made you better in your field that you really wanted to be better at, then each day was worthwhile. The days that you do bad paintings are not necessarily bad days; they're just days that you learned a little bit more. And it's not something that I planned. I never planned to be an artist. I just kind of was doing it as a child. And
so what how did that evolve? So
I mean, it was kind of a very circuitous route to where I'm at, but but thinking back on it, and when I talk to people, it made a lot of sense. I didn't go to art school to be to become a painter. I went to a 4-year college, took the basics at Long Beach State, and I dabbled in the arts in that I took my illustration classes and I did all these things, but I never really had a chosen profession. I never really said, I want to grow up and be a portrait painter. I want to grow up and be a landscape painter. I want to grow up and be a scene painter. I never had time to do that because I was still having too much fun. I hadn't grown up yet. I was, surfing every day, doing my classes, and I tried to figure out a way in which I could incorporate art into making a living, and for some reason I just stumbled on silk screening, and I ended up silk screening t-shirts for all the bars and fraternities at Long Beach State in the 60s. Yeah, and I had a friend and I were going to go cross country in a big van, and we were going to silkscreen fraternity Greek letters on everybody's T-shirts out of the back of the van and make a killing, you know, and drink beer at all the fraternity houses. And we were from California and tan, and at that time I had blonde hair, and we were going to kill it. We were going to go all across the country when surfing was just in its infancy, and print T-shirts and have a great time. And he ended up running away to Canada because it was during the Vietnam War. So there was half of my team left. I went to Hawaii and worked at Crazy Shirts when it started out in the mid '60s, and printed T-shirts and realized that, gosh, there was this guy in Hawaii that's printing a ton of T-shirts for tourists, and I go, this is not just for bars and fraternities, this is a big deal. I mean, you could actually have a business and make money silk screening T-shirts in your garage. And so I came back to California and started a company and screen printed T-shirts, and at one time pretty much printed all the shirts for every surf company and every surfboard manufacturer literally in the world. I had accounts in Europe, in Japan, Australia, all over the United States, and I try these people who were in the surf industry, who I had been looking at Surfer magazine and looking at their pictures, you know, the icons of surfing, you know, in the '60s. They became friends of mine because they wanted T-shirts, and I was the guy that was doing it. I was one of the first guys to print T-shirts for the surf industry back in the '60s, and before you know it, I'm traveling and hanging out with these guys and having a great time. And you know, I had a surfboard. I built a surf shop in Japan and traveled all around surfing with guys. And as I said, you know, surfing with people you read about in magazines in places that you dream about. And so it was great. And I came back to California and I got tired of silk screening shirts after a while. You know, I did a resort line in the Caribbean and traveled down there, and we hung out and surfed and met all the owners of the different resorts and designed for them. And always came back to Laguna Beach because it was a great place to come back to. And got hooked up and started doing, the surfing thing was first, the resort line was second, and then in the '80s I got hooked up because since I was one of the only people around in the infancy of the silkscreen industry, so to speak, and the birth of the surfing culture industry in the '80s. Somebody who had designed T-shirt art for Van Halen couldn't get it separated and put it on a T-shirt, and so they called me up and asked me if I could do it, and I basically saved the merchandiser's butt, you know, because he was about to get fired because he couldn't figure out how to get the artwork onto a black T-shirt, and I had figured it out because I was doing it myself. So he and I became close, and so I got caught up and became part of the '80 and '84 tours for Van Halen in designing and printing their shirts for them, and so that was another avenue that just kind of happened. And so I came back after all that stuff, and through the '80s I was still designing, but I started dabbling in getting, I've always wanted to paint, and I was dabbling in it, but I was always busy silkscreening shirts at the same time, you know. So I had a business where I'd put on my silkscreen hat, and then I'd have in the afternoon or in the evening I would put on my painter's hat, and I'd play around. And then one day a bunch of guys and myself went out and said, hey, let's go painting outdoors, you know. And I had done it before when I'd been traveling, because when you travel you have your paints with you and you doodle, you know, with acrylics. But I had started messing around with some oils, and they all went out and painted on location.
Who were those guys?
Let's see, gosh, local guys. Jacobus Boss was one of them. Oh gosh, there's some basically Laguna guys. Okay. And they were painters who painted outdoors often, and I didn't paint outdoors very often, but I went out and painted with one day, and for some reason, and I don't know why, it just came easy. And you know, I always had a saying that, you know, fortune favors the prepared mind. You know, never just go blow it off. If something that you do or something happens that's easy, really for you, you just think about it for a while. So I sat back and started contemplating this whole outside deal, because I mean, I was painting outdoors, and they were really good paintings. And all the other people were struggling, you know. They're going, "Oh God, this is terrible," and I just went, "You know, this is not bad," you know. And they're going, "Wow, you know, when did you do that?" And so I started playing around with it, and then, you know, it was. I knew there was something there, but I hadn't found my voice yet, and so I kept struggling, and like every artist, I struggled, and I didn't know what I was doing, but.
Do you still struggle?
No, I don't struggle anymore. No, I don't. And the reason I don't struggle anymore is because it's because I can say I can do really good paintings, and I can do okay paintings, but I don't do bad paintings. And the reason I don't do bad paintings is because they never get finished if they start out being bad. That's the main thing, is that you know a painting is going to be good or not in the first 15 or 20 minutes, and it's because it's all based on the foundation. And
when do you know to let go?
First 15 or 20 minutes.
So at that point you'll realize this is bad. You wipe it down.
You wipe it off.
Yeah.
I don't do sketches before I go out. I don't. If I do a sketch, then the sketch sometimes can have the spontaneity and the fluidity, and then you have to copy the sketch over to the canvas, and then you're intellectually transferring something. It's not passionate, you know, it's not spontaneous. The thing about painting that I really enjoyed, as opposed to what I was doing previously in the silkscreen world, it was all preparation and cleanup, making screens, printing on paper, you know, layer after layer to get the image that you wanted. But the silk screening part of what I did, starting out in t-shirts and then going to paper, basically from silk screen to serigraphy, taught me shape and form. And
silk screen's all about big shapes.
It's all about shapes and form. You can put split fonts on it and blend color, but in order to get form, you needed at least 3 values of the same color, dark, middle, and a light value. And so I learned to see those values, and I started making collages out of them. So I started out with silkscreen t-shirts, silkscreen paper. I ended up tearing up all my paper or printing big swaths of blended color onto paper, and then tearing them up and making collages out of them, and utilizing the blends of color to layering to get the feeling of things going back in the distance, seeing form. And I got very technical with collages, and over a period of time, going from those layers, all that stuff that you did was the foundation to the top block of the pyramid, which was painting. It all taught me, t-shirt designs taught me design and shape and form, graphics, composition, balance. Collages taught me form, how to see the 3 values immediately and to be able to separate them into simplicity, understanding that it doesn't take a lot of information to make something understood, that we as human beings, when we see something, if it's in context, it's much more easily understood, as opposed to things that are out of context. And I discovered all this through collage. Then I started painting and taking it to the next level, and painting like I was collaging, you know, layers and very graphic shapes. And then the shapes got looser, and the edges got softer in some places and crisp in others. And then, as I say to students, you don't learn to paint in a nice, even contoured bell curve. Learning to paint comes in stages. You hit brick walls and then you climb them, and then you learn something and you level off, and then you hit another wall and you climb it and level off. That's why most artists really don't like what they do. And the reason why most artists don't like what they do is because their eye becomes more refined than their ability, even while they're painting. You know, as you're painting, you're learning. And so you may like what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you've learned something and you go, gosh, this isn't as good as it could be. Bingo, you hit a wall, you climb it, and you get to another level, and then you like what you're doing, and then bam, you don't like it. You hit another wall, you climb it, you start liking, and then you don't like it. Every good painter always has to not like what they do, because if they're not, there's no incentive to get better. If you like what you do all the time, then you're not going to get any better. So do I struggle? Yes, in the sense that I can do a bad painting, but it never gets finished. So I don't struggle in that respect. Generally speaking, I've done enough paintings and spent enough time out there to know what makes a good painting and what doesn't make a good painting. And so I don't start things that I know have inherent problems to them.
So what wisdom do you want to impart on somebody who might be watching this, who is trying to learn to paint, or who's trying to either make a career out of painting or just do it as a hobby? What do you think are the important lessons they need to be focusing on?
Well, the most important thing is to understand that not liking what you do is the catalyst to being a better painter. And
don't get comfortable.
Well, if you're truly have the desire to be a better painter, you're never going to be comfortable. But the rewards for getting better as a good painter are very small, and many times other people won't notice the reward. As you're a beginner painter, every single time you learn something, the reward is huge. You make huge steps in the beginning. But as you get better and better and better, the rewards are smaller, but you still sacrifice and still have the same kind of pain if you do something that's not right. You just try to eliminate those times when the things aren't right, and by picking subject matter that not necessarily subject matter, picking compositions and designs. My firm belief is that the most important part of painting is composition and design. And I think that by looking at history, the American Impressionists, who were by far, in my opinion, better drawers and executors of design than the French or any of the other Impressionist painters at the time. I don't think that anybody could ever draw and design as well as Sargent. So.
What painters that are gone now would you love to be able to sit with for 5 or 10 minutes?
Well, Sargent, Homer, and Hopper for sure. And then I would love to be able to get into the minds of some of these the people and just. I just wondered if Sargent was savant, and just the sense that, he was so good, and at what he did, and that it's almost to the point where he wasn't even human. And if you look at the sketches and the drawings and his ability to draw things from perspectives that were almost, out of comprehension of looking at him, it's hard to understand that he could draw it. And there's a lot of, and there was a lot of people that I enjoyed their paintings. I was attracted to the Ashcan School of Art with the Sloan and the Bellows, and the idea of painting subject matter that wasn't necessarily pretty. But
they sure made it beautiful, didn't they?
Well, they just used a lot of paint, and they had a lot of passion in their art. A lot of these painters weren't considered brilliant painters, but they were good, and they took chances, and they painted things that really documented, more importantly, the period of life which they had that wasn't all pretty, and. I think that what I have found in my own pursuit of painting is that I'm attracted to the things that aren't going to be painted by everybody else. I often have a huge sigh in my mind of like, if we're going to some place where everybody else is going to be painting the same thing, because for me there's no reason to.
Been done.
It's been done, and I think that in my life right now, that I think I want to spend more time in the intellectual part of painting before I start to paint. I want to think more about what I'm doing as opposed to just responding automatically to it. It's really easy to go and set up an easel and look at what you're going to paint and paint it. because it's sitting right there in front of you. You know, it's like setting up a still life. But there is more to painting, I believe, than just doing that. You know, there's an intellectual part that you could take something that exists, but you could change it in a way in which has another meaning to it, something deeper and more personal. And so I'm really trying to, in the backside of my life as a painter, you know, if there was a beginning part and a middle part and the backside of my life as a painter, I really want to spend more time thinking about what I'm going to paint and how I'm going to express myself and the imagery that I'm going to do, as opposed to just painting it because it's there.
So, how do you want to be remembered, or do you care?
I think that I've already cast I think it's already been cast, so to speak, in the sense that when I talk to people who I believe are informative of the area, they refer to me as one of the people, if not the person, who started bringing back the cityscape. I think that the response that I get from people who I respect in the art world, who know what they're talking about, you know, writers and directors of museums and things, they will say that I was somewhat responsible for people bringing back cityscape into the nomenclature. Prior to that, it was all landscape, and then immediately, as soon as I started painting red taillights in city cavernous San Francisco scenes, everybody started painting them. But they always say that you were the first. Yeah. And so I think that if there is going to be an asterisk after my name, other than being in the Encyclopedia of Surfing History,
and T-shirt history,
and as being one of the founders of the surfing industry, T-shirts in the Encyclopedia of Surfing, if there is an encyclopedia of painters there for this period of time, it will be the person who started the movement towards painting cities again.
So when they're researching you 100 years from now and trying to find out every little detail, what's the one thing that they don't know that they need to know about you?
You know what? I'm pretty much an open book. You know, there's not a lot about me that I haven't said to people already. I think that if there's one thing that is that I don't owe anybody any money.
And if I do it, I'm not talking about it.
Yeah, I don't owe anybody any money. That's the and I that what I have been doing has been an evolution and not a revolution. From silkscreening T-shirts to paper, to collage, to painting, to bringing intellect into the painting. I find painting easy. I find the intellectual part to be the stimulating part. Painting is just a process, but it's really the intellectual part that's starting to tickle me now.
Great. Ken, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Well, that was an interview that I recorded with Ken a few years ago in Maine when we shot his instructional art video. A couple of personal thoughts before we go. Ken was a painter's painter. He never played any games. He painted what he loved, and he did not try to fit in by painting what everybody else wanted him to do. As a result, his stature and quality as a painter grew. A few years ago, when I launched the first PleinAir convention, I called Ken because he was the first person who I had ever taken a workshop from when I decided to become a PleinAir painter. And also, of course, he is very popular, and I thought he'd be great on stage. So I loved the fact that he painted very, very large paintings with those big giant brushes. And I said, Ken, why don't we do something where we're going to give you 1 hour. You're going to paint a giant painting in 1 hour against the clock. It'll be a real challenge for you. It'll be fun for the audience. And so he agreed to it, and he nailed it. I think it was a 30 by 40 or larger. We did it again the next year, and we surprised him with an even larger canvas, and he nailed it again. Even though he was a little bit nervous, he wasn't sure he could pull it off, but he did. And he loved the challenge. He told me when we spoke recently that moment when he was on stage, when he was trying to beat the clock and do those big monumental paintings, it was one of the most special moments of his life. He loved being the rebel. This coming April at the PleinAir convention, we're going to be giving a Lifetime Achievement Award to honor Ken. He was thrilled that we were doing it, and he asked that his wife Paulette come in for it. Of course, he didn't know if he was going to be living or not. And I've asked Jean Stern to help me present the award because it was seeing Ken's work for the first time that got Jean Stern involved in the current PleinAir movement. And I'm asking his closest friends as well to join us on stage for the award presentation. And you? I hope you can be in the audience and make it as we honor Ken on the opening night of the PleinAir convention that is coming up in April. Ken's wide grin is going to be missed around the world of PleinAir, but he will not be forgotten. Thank you for listening today as we honor Ken Auster, a very great man. This podcast, episode number 4, is brought to you by PleinAir Magazine's PleinAir Convention, www.pleinairconvention.com. Remember, early bird pricing ends on February 14th. You can see your favorite legends on stage teaching you their techniques. People like Grand Canyon painter, the great Kurt Walters, the incredible watercolor legend Dean Mitchell, writer, director, and painter George Gallo, and over 60 others. It's an incredible faculty. I'm sorry I couldn't mention them all here. You can learn more at pleinairconvention.com. This was also sponsored by the PleinAir Salon with up to $21,000 in cash prizes. The big grand prize is going to be awarded at the convention, so enter your 5 best paintings today at pleinairsalon.com. You know, the PleinAir movement is very hot, which is why PleinAir Magazine is now the top-selling art magazine nationally at Barnes & Noble. Drop by, pick one up, or get a bi-monthly subscription for about half that price at the newsstands, or by going to pleinairmagazine.com. While you're listening to this, I'm going to be in Cuba for my Publishers Invitational. I'm leading a group of about 100 artists for the first large group of artists to ever go to Cuba in history. Monumental time, very historic. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll fill you in on the details in the future. Well, let's do this again sometime, like next week. We'll see you then. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher, founder of PleinAir Magazine. And remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. We'll see you. Goodbye.